Hey everyone, I'm Andrew Zavarucha of Zavvy Woodworks, and thanks for tuning in to our very first YouTube video. On this one, we're going to be building an entryway table built entirely out of white oak, but the key to it is we're going to be doing this out of scraps. If you follow our Instagram channel, we've recently had a lot of projects out of white oak: dining tables, bedside tables, coffee tables, and after that we have a lot of random pieces, full-size boards, and a lot of 8/4 inch stock left over. We're going to be taking these and mixing them into different parts so that we can get our full built on this entryway table. I'll run you through the design here shortly and then show you the progress as we build out every different section of it so we lead to that final result. So stay tuned and feel free, if you have any questions, to comment down below.
Now I bet you all were waiting for some cool Google SketchUp 3D model of this whole entryway table. Well, here at Zavvy Woodworks, we're a little more simplistic. I work on AutoCAD for my full-time job, so I'm fairly experienced with it, so I use it for all my build-outs. Helps me with my basic dimensions, knowing all the sizes of my boards that I'm going to need, and I'm able to dial it in pretty good. So, as you can see here on our design, we're going to be going with a 56-inch overall length to our entryway table, 18-inch depth, and a 34-inch finished height. The piece will encompass having 6 legs, all at an 1.75" by 1.75" finished dimension. All of our front and side pieces that are all connector pieces or a front profile will also have 1.75" finished dimensions. We'll have 2 undershelves in the base there at 25 3/8 inches long by 18 inches deep, and then we'll have 2 drawers as well, which I do intend to do dovetail drawers, which would actually be my very first project doing dovetails, so we'll see how it goes. The biggest key to this is we're going to be doing it out of leftover material and scraps from previous white oak projects. We've got some 10-foot boards, some 8/4 inch thick material, as well as some offcuts from a previous tabletop. In a lot of instances, we're going to have to glue pieces together to make this work, but that's part of the fun. So for this section, we're going to be running these legs. For these legs, we had some 8/4 inch thick material left over at roughly 36 inches long. What we're aiming for here is 1.75" by 1.75" finished dimensions. For that, we take 1-2 passes on the jointer, reference that against the fence on the jointer so we get 2 sides that are squared up, and then we're going to take it through the thickness planer so we get our final dimensions. We did unfortunately run out of enough material that was close to 2x2 at that time, so we did have to glue 2 of these boards together so that we could have enough material to cut it down to get that final 1.75" by 1.75" dimension.
So a great tip here is to be mindful of the pieces that you have to glue together. So I showed you that I was gluing those 2 pieces together for the leg, but unfortunately they didn't work out. The thickness was just off, so I ended up having to glue more on. What I ended up doing was 4 pieces so I could get this one leg. But you see, if you're mindful of the grain, you can match it up really, really well so that you can't even tell that these are individual pieces. As you can see right here, we were able to get this all nice and matched up. Now here's our glue line, but you can't even tell due to that grain matchup. So this was a really fortunate piece here that we were able to get a really good job on. And like I said, be mindful of it. If you have the luxury that you've got enough pieces that you can kind of follow that and be able to put them together in that grain, that similar grain, then that's awesome. It just is that little extra detail. And if all else fails, just put it at the back of the piece. No one's going to see it anyway.
We had a lot of half-inch offcuts from our previous project where we had an 8/4 inch thick table. So from here, what I've done is glue them all up into 2 sections, which will be our front and rear stretcher. Since we're only going to be showing the face profile of it on the front, we're not too concerned about seeing all those strip portions, as you'll only see them either by removing the drawer that'll be going in or looking up under the section. From here again, quick trip to the jointer, then to the thickness planer, and then we're actually going to be taking this over to the table saw to get it to its final dimension. Again, with this, we are going 1.75" by 1.75". For these, we will be splitting these in half, roughly, to get the front sections that'll be at about 25 3/4 at their finished length. Right now, they're at about 60 inches, so we will, like I mentioned, have to trim these up a bit. Next up, it's taking some of these 10-foot boards and breaking them down so we can make our top. Our top is going to be going to 52.5 inches finished, but with these at 10 feet, we're going to cut these down to 60-inch lengths. This allows us to make essentially a 60-inch top, and then we can kind of cut out what section we want out of that, as there will be some sections that have knots and whatnot. It's always best as you lay these out to kind of identify those problem areas. So for instance, on here on my middle board, I've got a large knot that I want to get rid of. The biggest problem with doing this sometimes is that we are going to have to change up our measurements. We won't have perfectly dimensioned boards. By that I mean, for these, I want to have a finished width of 18 inches, which normally would be 6-inch boards. For this though, because of this removal at the knot at 5.5, as you can see here, I am going to have to compensate slightly with my other boards. So for this, as you can see, I've already taken it through the joint and thickness planer. We're going to cut this up at 5.5 inch. For this next section, because our first board in the middle there is at 5.5, we're going to take these to 6.5. This will allow us to remove some material, and then on the final cut up, we'll remove a little bit off of each side. That'll bring us to our final dimension of 18 inches. So we're going to run these through, as I mentioned, at 6.5, and then we're going to proceed to gluing everything up. This board I've actually designated as my front board of the tabletop. So I'm going to keep the offcut and flip it underneath. It actually gives the appearance that the board is thicker overall, and I've got a mirrored grain. It'll make more sense when you see the final glue up. From here, I've got my boards finished, and what I actually want to do is designate exactly what section of these boards I want to take out for my tabletop. As mentioned, they are at 60-inch length, but I only need 52.5. From here, I identify any problem areas. From the left side, I've actually got a large knot that I want to remove. So from here, I'm going to take my board in 1.5 inches off the right-hand side, and then take it in 6 inches from the left. That'll give me 52.5 to my final cut dimension. From here, I identify where I want to put my dominoes, and I do it in 12-inch sections. Place 2 lines across the crease of the boards, move another 12 inches, do the exact same thing. This ensures that I keep everything aligned and that I know exactly where all my dominoes go, and that I don't put them in an area where I'm going to make any kind of a final cut. The particular domino I'll be using for this is an 8mm by 50mm. I've already got my 8mm cutter head in, and then I've adjusted the depth of it to a 25mm to adjust for 25 on each side of that, hence the 50mm. From here, it's basically just find my lines that I've identified previously and go to work with the domino. I know that not everybody has the luxury of this tool, and actually nor do I, so a big thank you to the folks at Windsor Plywood Sherwood Park for letting me borrow it. For this, it just makes everything a lot easier. It helps with our alignment, and it does add structural integrity to the joint. After putting the dominoes through its paces, it's time to just do a quick test fit and dry fit. From here, I just throw a few in, see how everything is coming together, and if I'm going to have any issues during the glue up. It is a little bit difficult on this workbench that we have here, as there are some glue spots kind of left over, so we don't get exactly a very flat surface. It is best to sometimes do this vertically just so you can get a little bit easier alignment. Now, I don't know about you guys, but glue ups, they kind of stress me out at times. There's always that moment of, oh boy, I've got a limited time to get this all together, get all the glue on, smear it on, make sure we've got full coverage, get my boards on, get it at the dominoes in sections, and then try to get this whole thing together and clamped. So despite how I usually feel about this, I did still decide to show you the process of it. From here, obviously, I've thrown my glue on, throw the dominoes into there, and it's fine that we've got a little bit of squeeze out from the domino section. As I lay onto this first board that goes on right on top of it, you'll notice that in those areas we did have a little extra glue, and that's perfect. We do want to see a nice squeeze out on there. That means we've got full coverage and that this should create a very tight and strong bond. Last board goes on pretty smoothly, no complaints. Again, nice little squeeze out from the excessive points of those joints, and that's a nice squeeze out overall. For this portion, we're basically doing the exact same thing we just did with the tabletop, but we're doing this for one of the lower shelves. We will be making 2 of these, but right now I'm just working on the one section as I'll need to figure out a few boards for the second section. From here, we cut, quick run through the jointer, over to the thickness planer, and then we'll be getting these all primed up and ready. Again, we are going to be going for an 18-inch final width, so I do want to make sure that I do the exact same process, go through everything, get my cuts down, and avoid any knots that we may have. For this, we were pretty good. I'm going to a 6-inch final dimension on here. I do always go a little bit over to just cut it down to final, so I go to 6 and an 1/8. Once we glue all those up, obviously we'll have an extra 3/8, but we can trim that off of one side and you really won't even notice the difference.